All right, thank you. That was fantastic, by the way. Thank you so much, Gareth. So let's begin. So creating B2B enterprise for large-scale organizations often feel like steering a ship. Each decision we make on this journey is pivotal. It requires a holistic approach to change, anticipating in effects, strategic thinking, and also critical thinking when it comes to tactical decision making, but often crucially, being an empathetic leader. So it's about balancing the innovation with the complex needs of the enterprise. So we often hear many successful stories, successful case studies, especially focusing on the B2C and cutting-edge technologies and seamless user experiences. But when we actually try to match these achievements with the B2B, we often face with different sets of challenges. And when I'm talking about enterprise solutions, I'm talking about large-scale B2B enterprise solutions and internal solutions in large organizations. But first, let's try to grasp an understanding of the landscape that we are navigating. Why our B2B enterprise solutions, including the internal solutions, are so complex? Before anything else, they are complex by nature. See, they operate within complex business domains. And it's not only that, their need extend to their own complex needs, it extends to their clients and their unique operations and their customers and their end users, their compliance, law and regulatory environments and so on, and including their own physical infrastructure. And enterprise solutions tackle problems that are vast and varied and often extend beyond the surface level challenges. So it often happens that you don't notice any of these challenges on the surface. And let's add the physical limitations and the physical infrastructure to all these complexities. So think about a depot, think about a warehouse, think about a distribution center. And global solutions have to adapt to those physical limitations of the other countries as well. And each of these spaces operate completely differently. And the growth. With the growth comes increased complexity. As companies grow, so their technical complexity and the domain. And for that reason, they are complex by scale. In an organization like that, it's very common to introduce some rudimentary tools to begin with, especially when they are forming. And they sound like good choices at the time, at the budget available at the time, and the technology available at the time. But it creates a huge challenge for us, but it creates so many hidden workloads and hidden manual workarounds. For that reason, large-scale enterprises have to heavily rely on human power to make this system work, simply to ensure all these systems connected and albeit with erratic behavior. So these people manually execute recurring tasks and analyze every day over and over again. And that creates an incredible cost to onboard these new employees to the business and integrate them to the existing workflow and show them how this system works and how they should make this system work. And it creates an incredibly steep learning curve for us. But not only for them, it creates a learning curve for us too. As product people, designers, and researchers try to understand how everything works. And that also creates dependency on few key individuals, because there are only a few people know how everything works, and they keep the domain knowledge. So what that means, if they are not around, things can get stuck, and that creates a bottleneck for the organization. And imagine all this complexity and trying to change one thing in the organization, and that might create a ripple effect. And then you might unintentionally create even more workload and even more workaround in the other parts of the businesses. Enterprise solutions tackle problems that are vast and varied and often extending beyond the surface level challenges that are invisible to the end users. And when an organization grows faster that they can adopt their ways of working and a technical infrastructure, they have to heavily rely on the human power to patch these systems up. So here's the challenge. How do we overcome these challenges? How do we navigate the complexities of challenges? I also like to get your reflections. I'm sure that you have been through similar challenges, B2B and including B2C. If we have time at the end, I'd like to get your reflections on that. How did you overcome these challenges? And these are the patterns that I observe. I like to know what are the other patterns that you observed, and I'm sure that if we have more hours, we can talk about that. So meanwhile, I'd like to introduce myself. My name is Esra. I'm based in London, and I'm a product innovation and design strategist. I work with SmartCo and currently in cybersecurity, working in the London Stock Exchange Group. And before that, I was at Sneak in other cybersecurity, but before my cybersecurity journey in the past 2 years, I worked at ThoughtWorks, a global consultancy firm. And there I worked across various industries. You can see some of the logos of my clients, and they are blend of B2C and B2B, but mainly organizations going through large-scale digital transformation and needed to change their ways of working while they are changing their technology and experience. So, going back to the challenge, so how do we navigate the complexities of enterprise design? But here's the real challenge. What do we do when this approach goes against the status quo? So here is how I approach it. So a true solution to these complexities requires a strategic perspective and more than a singular focus. It requires a blend of holistic approach to change, critical decision-making, and responsive research. So let's look into all these three and starts with the fundamentals of this approach. So it's given that when we are working on a product, we have to understand everything, right? We have to understand the problem space that we are working on. But in B2B enterprise, it is simply not enough. We have to understand the entire landscape and the entire ecosystem that is surrounding us, both internally and externally. We have to know what are the other dependencies, external factors, and anything that actually makes this organization and system work. And some of the practical examples of that could be ecosystem mapping. And an end-to-end service blueprint is a good one as well, because it is not only focusing on your small user journey and your own product, it is actually focusing on the entire service chain, including the internal players and actors, and also systems and technologies involved. So once you have the broader understanding, so think about the T-shape, now slice vertically. So vertical thin slicing is also a method. You can look into the book, Digital Transformation Game Plan. They also talk about the transformative approach to product thinking. So instead of focusing solely on the product space that we are working on the surface level, we really need to take a vertical thin slice that goes all the other layers so that we understand how the change that we are making might impact other parts of the business. And while you are doing that, you will encounter many, many unknown and hidden manual workarounds. It often happens that we also mentioned that people have to rely on heavily the manual workarounds to make those systems work. But the problem with that is they don't actually leave any trace on, they don't appear any of the data. So we really have to rely on qualitative data on this. So because if we solely rely on the quantitative data, we might miss all these manual hidden workarounds might be happening in the background. Sometimes it happens like it looks like a post-it on a screen. Sometimes it looks like a paper on the desk, and daily emails sent every day to just a few individuals. So those are the manual processes that I'm talking about. So I suggest lean on the qualitative research methods, do a lot of observing and shadowing like Garrett mentioned before, and also do a lot of passive and active observation. So take every opportunity as an advantage to do active observation and also passively observe. So understand the landscape of your system and explore any hidden processes and bring a transformative approach to change. And the second one is the critical decision making. So it is very common to actually come up with a temporary fix when we are especially in a rush. But the problem with that is sometimes those temporary fixes become permanent, and this especially happens in B2B space. In B2B space, everything you introduce might become their workflow forever. I'm not against temporary small fixes, but if the fix is not scalable, evolvable, or traceable, that will create the challenges that we were talking about earlier. Example, spreadsheet. If a spreadsheet is a temporary fix, what will happen is your users will ask for more columns. And build a solution that will help you actually collect more quantitative data so that you can create more data from that product, and also consider the entire product evolution. So build something that takes you closer to your vision, and then you can also understand and track the user behavior. And it often happens that when you present something new to the business users, they don't trust it, especially at the first time of the adoption. And when you present a data, they will question where that data is coming from. But there is design is a very good tool to actually build that trust. So you can actually create something that is trustworthy and transparent. For example, if you are analyzing a data on behalf of the users, show how that data was analyzed. If data is coming from somewhere, show the source of that data. And if you are using a new business terminology, you just say what that means. So create a transparent, good quality design that people will trust and start using. That is why I believe B2B enterprise organizations should prioritize good quality design. And I actually like to say that design like as if they were paying for it, because actually you mentioned that not often that you are not the one that is paying for. Sometimes a decision has been made before you. This happens a lot in enterprise. It's either it's an internal solution that you have to start using and you have to love it because you have no other option, or it's a B2C product or B2C to B2C to B. That actually you really love it, and you go to your manager and then you put a pressure on them to really buy the product. So it's not always the case that you pay for it. But what I like to say, that create a design that they would want to pay for it. And it often happens that in a business environment, the product features are prioritized for actually favorite customers and high-paying customers, and also high-paid users. So this happens a lot. But we have to really deeply think about the decision-making process. Again, here, be critical and think about the value and the impact that brings, instead of prioritizing a dashboard for managers. Think about the end users and how many people might be using it and the impact that might create. It happens very, very often. What will help us maybe making that decision or articulate our argument to the business is using a bit of like scientific method to our critical decision-making approach. Could be a metrics-based decision-making, doesn't matter what you use. It's just a way to actually show the value and impact to the decision-makers, if it is not you. And hypothesis-driven product discovery is also another good way of doing it, because you have a point and you can actually back this up with a measurable outcome. But there are lots of frameworks, methods, and approaches out there. Generate trackable solutions that take you closer to your vision. With trustworthy design and trustworthy design and careful consideration of your customers and users' feedback. Responsive research in B2B is incredibly important. So we said that we need to understand the landscape, we need to understand how everything is working, but when you want to talk to a stakeholder or a business owner or the manager and then ask them how everything works, they may hesitate to share all the pain points and the issues that they are going through, and they might only highlight the positive ones. They might be the ones who build those systems, or they are the ones who are responsible for how everything works. So the lack of transparency really creates a big issue for us, because if we don't know their issues, we can't help them. So one way of achieving this, overcoming this, is avoiding aggressive design and research strategies, especially at the beginning, even before you started building the trust. So build trust over time and adjust your method systematically and slowly, and they will get there before they know. And we encourage designers and researchers and product people to go and do guerrilla testing and rapid prototyping. I love it, we should all do, but it doesn't always work in this case. First of all, when you bring something new to the people and show something new, it creates an anxiety in some users. They might think that they are going to lose their job. So in 2015, almost it's 9 years ago actually, I worked at a bank and I did a lot of shadowing and research at a branch, which is an incredibly difficult thing to do, to get the NDA signed and get the approval from the bank, and it was a government bank as well. And I invited the participants to the office to show them the new designs based on the research and the decision that we made. And the first participant asked me, am I in trouble? So that really hit me very hard and made me understand. I was very professional in my approach. I read the script. We all know, right, how to plan and approach and read the script. But all they are thinking is like, am I in trouble right now? And the other thing is that not all business users want to tell you their pain points because they don't see them as a pain point. It's their job. So it really takes some time and education for them to really understand they can tell you anything, even the color of the button. So create a safe environment for business users and address their potential anxiety and be very empathetic and responsive to the situation. And ethical research is important in B2C environment as well. It's a little different. We face with different challenges in the B2B when it comes to ethical research, especially sharing audio and video recordings. Those are the people who worked in the company before, and those recordings shouldn't be shared with everyone. But more importantly, we don't need those recordings. So research becomes irrelevant over time. Doesn't matter, B2B, B2C, just delete them when the study is over, and you are safer that way. And when you are especially approaching, it could be internal users as well, but it would be your B2B client as well. Get their manager's consent before approaching them, especially for the first time, and let them watch the introductory session, it's fine. But especially for the first sessions, again, before even you start building the trust or understanding the safetiness between the user and their manager, don't let them watch the sessions. So that is very important. So protect the privacy of your participants. But that might change over time once you realize that it's all good. Manager knows how to approach, and the users know that they are in safe hands. So be empathetic with stakeholders and users. Address their anxiety and systematically foster feedback culture and trust and conduct ethical research. So for me, a true solution to these challenges require a strategic perspective and understanding of how product impact, company's operations, experience, and people. And to do that, we have to have a holistic approach to change with critical decision-making and responsive research. Thank you very much. Thank you for listening.
We do have time for a question or two. In fact, we've got a few minutes, so
nice.
plenty of time for questions. Anyone, hands up if you have a question.
Any reflections, any questions?
Or you said you wanted people to share their own
if you are happy, if you
experiences
say
as well.
something different or...
Come on, be brave. There we go.
Sorry, I don't actually have a reflection for you.
That's fine.
Yeah, I just had a question because you're talking a lot about doing this for enterprise, and I assume this is all like locally in the UK. How would you handle this if there was like a conflicting use for like an international global database, for example? Like, for example, in Asia, they might use it completely differently than in the UK or in America. So how would you handle that?
Yeah, I actually moved to UK only almost 8 years ago, and the bank example I gave was from my home country, Turkey, aka Turkey. And I also worked with actually Asia before. One of my biggest clients was bought by a very large Chinese company, and I really enjoyed the experience. So the cultural difference is definitely a thing. So I would say for me is to be really prepared for anything and not making any assumptions. And not assuming that everyone knows the practices that you are doing. And it's not only like different countries, right? Even if you do the same practices in the same country, let's not assume that people will actually be prepared to share everything with you. Like, even asking for the camera to be on could be very intimidating for some people, and or share your screen with me could be like very culturally inappropriate for them. So the best way of doing it, if it is like a planned research, to actually maybe prepare some questions beforehand. I assume that is for when engaging with participants. That might actually give you a bit of like a sense and taste of how to approach that. And we are actually surrounded in an amazing community. It wouldn't be nice to actually reach out to a professional from that country to get a bit of like an idea on how to research. But even then, things might not go like how you planned. In examples that I'm, from Turkey, and I did the research in my country, and I faced with these challenges again. Being prepared and not making an assumption beforehand could be the way to go. Research helps, but only gets you somewhere. That's why using the cognitive empathy, using our empathy skills will really, really help.
Thank you for your question. Our next question.
Hello, I'm Jeremy Acklam. I congratulate you on your excellent presentation.
Thank you.
I work for a company who are not as enlightened as those who you've worked for. My question is, in your experience, what is the best place to start the journey that you are very well along the path of?
Yeah. I would ask what journey, but I would say the best place and time to start the journey with others and not alone, because I realize that is actually the best way to really to make the change happen. So I did talk about digital transformation a lot, and I did work in so many different companies and countries that are at different parts of the journey, but one thing that they had in common was they were large scale, and you know how growth happens, and you have a lot of things that you need to change, including technology, people, culture. But one thing that I noticed, the transformation projects that they were successful actually started with the people together. So taking people in this journey so that you are not actually imposing a change to them, telling them this is how you do it now, but take them in a journey in a way that they feel like they are part of the decision. Then they will believe it, and they will be given the space to debate. You know what? It doesn't have to be exactly like how you are suggesting. And I never actually repeat the same approach and the methods in every client, in every project, and it really changes. But that's, for me, the one successful method, starting the journey together with other people.
Thank you for that question. We probably have time for 2 of the 3. So first put their hand up gets 1 question right now. Okay, this gentleman, and you very quick as well. So we're going to start over here.
Sorry, guys. My question to you is, I worked for a certain internal team of a major bank, and they do not have a view of the end users of their product. My responsibility was to actually improve the tools that this team worked with. And the challenge that I was having is, not only is the domain very complex, it is totally alien to me, but also I was given just a matter of a few weeks to show value. And pressure is higher for the reason that the decision maker who actually brought in me in the first place got to hear about user research and user experience design for the first time, and they wanted to check if it is worth investing in design or in research in the first place. So given that it takes quite a lot of time to even understand the context of things sometimes, how do we ensure that we still deliver value in situations such as this? I was just lucky that I got to do a lot of contextual inquiry with a lot of team members using those tools, and I was somehow able to identify problems which were evident by nature. But otherwise, if the context is like really difficult and complex to understand, how do you approach these kind of situations?
First of all, it's amazing that they brought you in and invested in this research. That's perfect. And the time is always a challenge for everyone. But your challenge is the complex domain, right? You have to learn. And when I especially do the product discoveries for the first time, if it is especially the big one, if it is the beginning of a new project, it's always a challenge to actually stopping somewhere. So I like to follow the double diamond method. And double diamond method is like kind of like a funnel. So you take all this information with like converging and diverging thinking. But the decision there is like knowing where to stop. Do I have enough information to move on to the next stage? But we can only take so much information, right, in our brain. And also business evolves and changes, like we talked about. Some of the information actually becomes relevant because by the time you figure it out and then do the product and present something new, maybe that process will change. So my suggestion would be collecting enough information that helps you move on to the next step, whatever that step will be. Because once you move on to the next step, everything will become like a lot easier. All these like new terminologies and things that you learned will feel a lot easier. And also prioritize. They always used to say, a thought works like pick your battle. Because there are always like a lot of things to do, and we really have to pick our battle and be strategic with that. What is the most important thing to do? Maybe narrowing down the user group might be a one, but again, value and impact, prioritize the value and impact there. Yeah, narrowing down the user group and do you feel like you have enough information to move on to the next stage, and you will continue to learn in the next step anyway. I hope that helps.
Thank you.
No worries.
Thank you very much for your question. And our last question now before we go and eat some food.
Thank you very much. That was a really interesting presentation to hear.
Thank
Mine's no worries. Mine is kind of a reflection, and then at the end a sort of question. But obviously you mentioned around bottlenecks, and then obviously certain people in the organisation having this sort of gatekeeping, this sort of knowledge. And this used to happen a lot to me. I used to work for a well-known sort of telecoms company as like a front-facing customer person. And in order to just like do basic things for the job, like sign somebody up for a new contract or get them to upgrade, not only were we like interacting with customers and trying to sort of upsell or things like that, you also had to contend with the fact that actually getting something to just do your basic job, there were about 3 to 5 different systems that you had to switch between to actually just do a job and talk to somebody and keep them interested. And it really was a complete nightmare. But it did kind of end up leading to this sort of gatekeeping of knowledge, because if there was an error, you'd then have to go on, switch from a tablet onto the desktop, so there's only 2 of them. And then somebody would have to then come in and sort that out. And what it ended up leading to was it not being compliant. It would be 1 or 2 people that had this knowledge, and they'd know a fix or a temporary fix for it, but it wouldn't end up being compliant. And in the end, you know, people came in to sort of investigate it, which was quite a scary thing when you're like 18. I suppose my question is sort of, how would we as researchers, or how would we sort of uncover that in an ethical way?
Yeah.
But yeah, I'd love to hear your thoughts on that.
First of all, I really don't blame the people. I blame the company culture here. So I'm going to generalize a bit, but I feel like in an organization like that, if you are the hero, and if you're that one hero that knows everything, you get actually like reward for that. So there aren't a lot of like knowledge share, and maybe people love that as well, like hold on to that. But the scary thing is like all the transformation that of the knowledge that we have becomes irrelevant, and we have to evolve and change. So one thing that I like to do is actually in my especially research, and when I put together a report, which is like a very lightweight report really, I avoid using like people names, even the job titles, and I actually look at the subject as problems and things and processes, and not pinpoint the people. And the root cause might be like that these people are gatekeeping, but maybe it's actually the decision maker also needs to see that as well. I would say that maybe that's always my strategy. The best way of best time to change things is when you already have something to change in that area. So I always like, we always have something to do, right? But I always have a dual track in my mind, things that I want to change. And that when that opportunity comes, I already did have a lot of knowledge, a bit of research. I take that as an advantage to change that thing that I'm not happy about. So when it's that coupled together, sometimes works. Business are okay with that, because they don't need to create like a separate budget. It's already part of the other solution. That's that one strategy that I do, and it works like majority of the time. And the other one is that if your intention is to actually bring that problem to the surface, then looking at a very like a scientific and a high level way, and avoiding using people names. And as actually Garrett mentioned, it's actually the in B2B and enterprise, it's about the cost saving. If you can kind of demonstrate that with numbers, because we love numbers, that might be another way to actually go.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you to everyone for your questions. And sorry for those 2 that didn't get answered. We will have the Q&A discussion later on, but I don't want to keep anyone from their food. So can I have everyone put a hand together for Esra and that awesome presentation?
Thank you.
Thank you so much.